Essentially, the Burning Crusade, or the title of the new expansion set, refers to the Burning Legion's ongoing war to eradicate all life in the cosmos. In the prehistory of the universe, as planets lashed out, created this giant cosmos, a race of kind of mysterious godlike beings called Titans began to slowly move throughout the universe and cultivate these kind of burgeoning worlds. As they did this, they came across a number of like demonic races like the Eridar, the Pit Lords, the Nothrazim, a lot of the races that currently comprise the Burning Legion. As they met these races, they realized that the universe they're trying to form will never be safe as long as these forces were out there essentially, causing trouble. So one of the Titans, a guy named Sargeras, a name you guys may recognize from the series, Sargeras was a Titan in charge of punking down all these demons, right? He would kind of go and beat their heads in and essentially imprison them in some dark corner of the universe. As he started doing this, he went a little nuts.
And ultimately developed the idea that creation has failed, that everything the Titans are trying to do is wrong and pointless, and that entropy and hate and destruction are the only absolutes in the universe. So he gets this bright idea: let's wreck everything. Let's follow in the Titans' wake and snuff out everything. It's got to end. It's just a big cosmic joke. To this end, Sargeras went back to this abyssal prison where he had kind of put all these bad guys, and he shattered it. And he brought all these guys out, and he bound them into one singular force known as the Burning Legion, and gave them one horrible commission: burn it all. The first invasion of the Burning Legion on Azeroth and the Night Elf heroes principally that rose up to halt the Legion's advance the first time. Those of you who have been following the RTS series, most recently Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, pretty much chronicled round 2, when the Legion, pretty pissed off, showed up again to just end this planet that's in its way. And again, the Night Elf heroes from ages past came to the forefront and rallied the younger races, namely orcs and humans, to help them defeat the Legion and save their planet once again. We really want to stress that it is a cosmic conflict, and all of these things and all of these places and all of this history will come into play long term. We felt as our first expansion set outing, this really sets a tone. It sets a tone that this is a much bigger conflict than just this world and just these races in contention. Warcraft 2 expansion set was called Beyond the Dark Portal, and that storyline involved the orcs had done a few invasions on Azeroth, and the Alliance had come back and pushed the orcs back through the Dark Portal and into their homeworld of Draenor. And at the time, the orcish leader, a guy named Ner'zhul, who some of you may recognize as being 50% of our current Lich King, opened up a series of gateways on Draenor that led to other worlds. Like we said earlier, there are multiple worlds in the cosmos, and he figured, let's pick one and get the hell out. The problem in his genius plan was that these gateways in such close proximity began to rip the world of Draenor apart. Now, the human heroes at the time, there were 5 of them, I believe, that were principal heroes in that game. They realized that with the Dark Portal still open to Azeroth, if Draenor explodes, that resultant explosion could head back through the Dark Portal and kill millions on Azeroth. So they made a very selfless choice to destroy the Dark Portal from the Draenor side, and that they did. And so for years, those heroes have been presumed dead, and Draenor as a world, as a setting, has been presumed to be space dust. Actually, it's kind of cool for those of you in the know. The Valley of Heroes in Stormwind, as you roll into Stormwind, the big grand entrance, those 5 statues are of those 5 heroes. Kurdrin, Danath, Khadgar, Alaria, Turalyon, they're all kind of honored in the Valley of Heroes. Our second look at Draenor, what has become of it, occurred in the Warcraft 3 expansion set, The Frozen Throne. Almost said Beyond the Frozen Throne, which would have been stunning. In the Frozen Throne campaign, we see one of the former heroes of the setting, this guy named Illidan Stormrage, has gotten himself into some trouble with the Burning Legion, who all this time has still been out there. In an attempt to escape the Burning Legion, Illidan flees to Outland. He discovers that chunks of Draenor still exist, floating in the twisting nether as, let's say, for instance, a series of small continents all kind of bound together, floating in the astral plane. So Illidan very quickly, with his newfound allies, the Naga and the Blood Elves, we'll talk about Blood Elves in a minute, set out to take control of this very cool space. And as Illidan was hanging the curtains and making himself at home, he discovered that the gates that Ner'zhul had opened up years before were still standing. and they were still open to these other worlds in the universe. Given his paranoia and his need to not be found by the Burning Legion, Illidan set out to close all those portals. Essentially, that's the way Outland exists right now. Outland is kind of a closed pocket dimension. It has its own struggles and conflicts, but you have these gateways to other worlds that are now closed, and Illidan is pretty much the Don, right? He's in charge, he's the man, and his Naga and Blood Elf enforcers, and he's got other agents to bear, pretty much control current, present-day Outland. But these gateways that Illidan does not want open, they are our conduit to fighting the Legions. The trick is, we're going to go to Outland, and we're going to reopen those damn gates. And through those gates, we're going to take the fight to the Legion's doorstep. Because beyond Azeroth, the Burning Legion is attacking all of those planets. Years ago, in the development of Warcraft 3, there was one day where Night Elves happened. Remember Sam Didier, our art director, he had just done the perfect piece of art. It was the first Night Elf. I'm like, that's it. Wow, they're purple. You know, it was just such a like just one of those ideas that you hope you have over the course of your career. It's like that, Sammy, that makes sense on every level. And I knew immediately at that moment that we were going to have to do something with High Elves, because just competition factor. One day, High Elves are going to have to get a facelift too, and they're going to have to be just as cool as that concept, or what I hope that concept's cool, y'all. I don't want to sound like that, but you know what I mean. At any rate. So we've always been excited to relook at the High Elves and attempt to do something with them that, to our knowledge, has not been done in pop fantasy up to this point. You know, there's all sorts of cool worlds out there, right? But I don't think anyone's abused High Elves to this degree so far. So let me tell you a little bit about them. Again, I apologize for talking so much. That glazed look in your eyes, these guys have it like every day. It's horrible. Blood Elves are our High Elves. And to make a real long story short, they were once Night Elves. And back in the day, 10,000 years ago, they were exiled from their homeland because they just wouldn't stop playing with magic. And as one of our core themes in World of Warcraft, magic is absolutely corrupting. You shouldn't be using it. Blood Elves serve as our example of what happens to a group of people when they just don't stop playing with it, or abusing its power. That sounded really bad. I hope we're getting this on tape. You know how you try and prep and not say anything stupid in front of like 1,000 people? All good. So, Blood Elves, thank you. So like I was saying, Blood Elves were exiled from their homeland long ago. They sailed across the sea. They founded a new homeland called Quel'Thalas, and at the heart of this land they had an artifact called the Sunwell. The Sunwell was a fount of energy that pretty much provided them with unlimited arcane energy. And even members of their society, over time, over the generations, even members of their society that did not practice magic, tailors and farmers, were all kind of subtly affected by the Sunwell and its energies. And ultimately, during Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, Prince Arthas, the evil human warlord, rolled his undead army into Quel'Thalas and pretty much slaughtered over 90% of the High Elven race. And he rolled their real pretty kingdom as well. The Scourge also destroyed the Sunwell, which pretty much for the first time in the Elves' history severed their link to the arcane. Many of them didn't even know that they had become essentially addicted to magic, like on a racial level, on a genetic level. They needed to survive. So shortly after that sequence played out in Warcraft 3 and the Elves are no longer able to pull upon this power source that they had always used, they find themselves getting sick and dying by inches. And they realize that they were, in fact, addicted to magic, and suddenly the Night Elves were right. Oh, damn it, I can't stand when they're right. And they knew they were in trouble. And their leader at the time, a guy named Prince Kael'thas Sunstrider, came to the forefront, realized that his people were in trouble, that something drastic needed to be done. So Kael'thas made a deal with the devil named Illidan Stormrage. In exchange for his services and his people's services, Illidan taught Kael'thas and the Blood Elves, the now named Blood Elves, how to siphon demonic energies, how to siphon ambient arcane energies, from the air. And in doing so, he damned the last vestiges of the High Elven race to retain their magical addiction, but feed it with really unwholesome energies. Because of this, actually, let me take a step back and explain the name Blood Elves. The name itself isn't in reference to anything dark. The name itself was chosen as a badge of honor to honor their fallen people, to honor their fallen homeland. So it's kind of like, we are those of the high elven blood. It's a mark of distinction that they survived the trials of their race. So jumping back into the present. Oh boy, can I jump back into the present? Let's rewind tape. Sorry guys. It's a lot to juggle. The Blood Elves now, because they have been siphoning demonic energies, and they've been very overt about it, right? And they're prideful. They're powerful again. Their eyes are glowing green. They're very bold. They're much more aggressive than they used to be. We're starting to see the side effects of tampering with, it's not just arcane energy anymore, it's fel energy, right? For those of you in the know, fel energy is demonic energy. It's essentially entropic. It's essentially death energy. And they're really stoked about using this stuff and rebuilding their homeland. While they're doing this, their comrades, right, the Alliance, these guys that they've been partners with for years, if not generations, are starting to get really nervous around them. Whoa, guys, didn't the Night Elves warn you that this is kind of bad? You guys are starting to trip us out a little bit. Dwarves and humans don't want to play ball. They're not returning phone calls. The Night Elves can smell it on them. They can smell this demonic taint. They can smell it in their blood. Utterly disgusted. Actually, it remains to be seen if Night Elves would even, kill them on sight. It's unclear in my mind whether Night Elves would just be done with these guys after all these years. So the Blood Elves really, as they're rebuilding their homeland, don't have a whole lot of allies anymore. And they're happy about it. They could care less. They're on a road to power at any cost. The whole racial psychology is changing, given the trauma that they went through with their homeland and their people being destroyed. They could care less. They're going to do whatever they have to do. One other little point is that their leaders, Prince Kael'thas, that I spoke of a little earlier, I suggested that the Blood Elves have some kind of fealty to the demon Illidan. And if Illidan's an outland, it pretty much is that the elite Blood Elves are also an outland working for him. So the player Blood Elves, the ones that y'all will be creating and playing and adventuring with, are the Blood Elves that are still left on Azeroth and clearly not in Outland. And they're driven to rebuild their home and one day reach Outland. One of the big kind of caveats to being a Blood Elf is that they view Outland, where their leader is, they view it as Eden, as a paradise, as the promised land. And they're going to spend their careers up to level 55, something like that, working their way to get to Outland. That's what they need to do. Their homeland's great, all good, but Outland's where our destiny lies. And in that, they're going to be forced to make some decisions. If the Alliance will not open the Dark Portal and take them to Outland, someone will. So while it sounds a little funky to have elves of any stripe being part of the Horde, you'll see, as we unfold more information, and as we develop more, you'll see why. Why would they be part of the Horde? One of the funny little elements is the leader of the Forsaken, the Banshee Queen Sylvanas Windrunner, was upwards of 4 years ago the Ranger General of Quel'Thalas. Sylvanas, although cold and rotting and icky, still has a lot of love for Quel'Thalas. She still has a lot of love for her people and identifies with them on many fronts. So that could be an in for the Blood Elves. It's something certainly that they will leverage in their attempt to use the Horde to get what they need. So anyway, there's some vibe on that. How are we doing on time, guys? Woo! Okay, so
good.
Holy cow, I'm through my list. So guys, that's really what else?
Nothing we could say.
Right.
Top that.
What are you talking about, dude?
We got 35 more minutes, Chris.
Let me wing it a bit more. So Outland, right? If any of you remember the maps of, how many people in the room have played Warcraft 2X? Look at that. Old people, old school. Not that old, I know. Oh my God, I was in my 20s when I did it. At any rate, a lot of the lands and the zones that we'll ultimately build for Outland, let me ask, hold on, sidebar. we talking about the zones we're doing in Outland?
Yeah.
All good. Okay, back to our programming. My hard drive's full. I'm really not good with short-term memory. At any rate, a lot of the lands and the places and the kind of the unique locations that were featured in Warcraft 2 X will play out in Outland. We're really trying to be as true to the continuity and as true to the lay of the land and the creatures and all that as possible. I don't remember where I was going. Maybe we should just open it up for questions. Why don't we just open it up for questions? I'm done.
Are you done?
I may be. It's probably best that I be done. You guys want to do questions now? Let's do that. All right.
Okay.
All right. This question's kind of inevitable. I know you probably don't want to address it, but why are there 2 Hakars in Warcraft lore?
Did Richard Knack ask you to ask that? Did he roll me on that? Damn it.
Number 2.
I'll roll that out. I'll let the guys off the hook. The answer is my bad. And how I was talking about the hard drive being full, essentially what happened is that in the War of the Ancients trilogy, the first book, Richard had created a character named Hakar. I think it was Hakar the Houndmaster, if memory serves. Pretty cool demon character who's one of the agents of the Burning Legion. And I think what happened, which happens more often than I really want to admit, it was just such a cool name, it was just kind of jumbling around in the hard drive. And when I went to jam out Hakar the Soul Flayer, Hakar, I'm a genius, you know? These guys roll me on that like daily, right? Like, dude, you know Luke Skywalker's already taken, right? Who took it, you know? So that was my bad. So I'll try not to do those anymore.
In Alpha and early Beta, there was talk about having each race having a quest line, a life quest series, and that talk stopped midway through Beta and haven't heard anything about it since. Is there still a plan?
Sure. What we decided to do instead, because originally we started work on life quests and we found that they were actually becoming too specific to the race, and the fact that it was like every undead guy was like, oh, I must go back and rescue my father, and then there's another undead guy like, oh, your father died too and he needs rescue. You know, so we started realizing that these cool individual quests weren't that cool and individual after a while. So what we more steered in the direction of was just doing epic quest lines at the high level. You know, like somebody mentioned the Onyxia Horde quest, you know, love it or hate it is a very epic quest line, or all of the Darrowshire quests, that sort of thing. So we'd rather sort of get more stories based around the NPCs than try to tell you, the character, what your life story is. Only you know what your story is. You know, were you wearing full burnished chain at level 18 and, you know, you really hated Redridge, but you thought Silverpine was a great zone or something like that. But we didn't want to like make this canned story and force you to think, oh, I got abandoned and he was abandoned too and him too, and now we're all not abandoned. So we steered away from that direction when we felt like the quests were getting too canned.